Welcome to CTV. Today we're gonna fill you in on what happened on Flash Season 1. Obviously, this video is going to be spoiling the entire season for you, so stop the video when you're at the point that you're watching the show. But the idea behind this is to fill you in a hurry as to what actually happened throughout Season 1, so you'll get quick rundowns of each episode. So the first season of the amazing show The Flash saw the birth and growth of our superhero. Episodes 1, 2, and 3 are respectively all about our hero in his first days. Barry learns various things such as how fast he can move, how he needs to ingest massive amounts of calories to maintain his health, and what he's capable of as a hero. We also learn much about the supporting cast in Cisco, Caitlin Snow, and Dr. Wells, members of the Star Labs that intend to help Barry learn his powers. During these episodes, he fights against the first Weather Wizard, Danton Black, a man that can clone himself, and Kyle Nimbus, a man that can turn into a poisonous gas. The biggest thing to understand for the rest of the season is that Barry is trying to find out who his mother's killer is, because he remembers a red blur and a yellow blur the night that she died. In my opinion, these are great starter episodes for the series, and each week had me wanting more. Episode 4, Going Rogue, is when things began to ramp up into a serious manner for the comics, because this is when the first well-known Flash villain, Captain Cold, showed up. One of Barry's friends, Cisco, reveals that he invented a cold gun that can potentially stop Barry if he turned evil, and that gun has been stolen. So Barry goes on an adventure to stop the thief, Leonard Snart, while Cisco deals with the idea that a weapon that he built could possibly harm one of his own friends. Captain Cold ends up getting away from everyone near the end, but in the closing credits, it's this episode that we're also introduced to Mick, soon to become Heatwave. With episode 5, Barry meets General Wade Eiling, the man who is trying to capture and stop all metahumans. We also meet Plastique, but don't get too attached to her as the episode ends with her death, and Barry realizing that there are more people out there that don't want him around, more so than just the villains. Not everyone is happy that superheroes have been born into this universe. We also get the first mention of Gorilla Grodd since the pilot, though nothing comes of it. Episode 6 is a pivotal moment for the Flash because he actually gets the name The Flash because before this he was being called The Streak. Episode 7 is when we start to get a confirmation that there is more to the man known as Dr. Wells. There have been hints through this throughout the season so far, but it is here that we finally see Dr. Wells can look into the future, and he's using this to steer Barry Allen down a path of a hero, towards becoming the Flash. Episode 8 is probably the first truly epic moment for the series as Oliver Queen from Arrow joins the team for this episode. Arrow and the Flash team up to face off against an enemy that can send people into an uncontrollable rage. Because of its effects on Barry, he ends up fighting against the Arrow, and we get to see who is truly the best. But their fight gets interrupted as they save Barry and stop the villain. Episode 9 is the first true appearance of the Man in Yellow, otherwise known as Reverse Flash and this season's ultimate villain. He is faster than the Flash and seemingly knows the Flash. A few other side plots develop here, and we learn that Eddie, one of the police officers that is friends with Barry, is about to ask Iris, Barry's childhood friend and longtime crush, to move in with him. Ronnie, Caitlin's boyfriend, is also revealed to be alive, having survived the original explosion that granted Barry and the other metahumans their powers. We end this one learning that Dr. Wells is keeping the Yellow Flash suit in his little secret future chamber. Episode 10 is when Mick returns as Heatwave, and the Flash needs to battle against both Captain Cold and Heatwave using their own guns against them. Each of them both gets captured, which really makes the Flash realize that sometimes he needs to use his head, and not just his speed. We end this one with Captain Cold's sister busting them both out, and the Rogues becoming one step closer to becoming a full team. The next two episodes are a tad bit of filler, but good nonetheless. In episode 11, Cisco deals with a bully from his past as he has arrived as a new villain named Pied Piper. We also learn a tad bit more of the Dr. Wells situation with the Reverse Flash in the future. Nothing massive, but we do learn that he needs to charge his batteries, it seems. Episode 12 is the Flash facing off with a teleporter, while Cisco and the former Pied Piper do a little research into Ronnie, and we discover that Ronnie really isn't dead. Ronnie merged with Dr. Stein as a part of the Firestorm project on the night of the explosion. Episode 13 is all about the Firestorm Matrix, and we discover that both Dr. Stein and Ronnie survived, and they're both in the same body. So the team at Star Labs figures out a way to separate them in an explosion, and while this is going on, Cisco learns that it is in fact Barry in the past the night of his mother's death. But it's a much older Barry, not the kid that's already there. Basically, we learn that Barry from the future is the one that went back into the past and somehow caused the death of his own mother. Episode 14 is the group trying to figure out if Dr. Stein and Ronnie are okay and if there are any other effects from their merging. Then, Dr. Eiling shows up and kidnaps Dr. Stein to try and figure out the Firestorm Matrix. Luckily, they rescue Dr. Stein, and in the end, Reverse Flash kidnaps General Eiling and brings him into a sewer where we learn that Gorilla Grodd has been staying, and he's not too happy with General Eiling. Episode 15 is when we finally learn how insane the Flash's powers can get. The Weather Wizard's brother arrives in town and wants revenge for his brother's death. But he does this in a big way. He sets off a massive wave that will crush Central City. But a lot of other things are happening in this story at the same time. Cisco figures out that Dr. Wells is actually the Reverse Flash. And Dr. Wells then kills him by putting his hand through Cisco's chest. While this is going on, we actually learn that Dr. Wells is actually a character named Eobard Thawne, and he's been stranded in the present day, so he needs Barry Allen to get strong enough to correct the Speed Force and fix everything so that he can go home. Barry even reveals his identity to Iris, and he finds out that she loves him. In the last moments, as Barry is trying to save everyone by running so fast that he creates a wind wall to block the wave, he ends up traveling through time, and he goes back 3 days before anything happened. This goes right into episode 16, in which Barry isn't fully aware that he time traveled, and he feels like he's just experiencing an extreme case of deja vu. But once he finally figures out what's really going on, he wants to correct the timeline. But Dr. Wells explains that he can't tell anyone what's about to happen. Otherwise, the timeline will try to correct itself, and bigger problems will result from the corrections. Barry ignores this, but as he tries to correct the events he knows about, Cisco gets kidnapped by Captain Cold Heatwave and is forced into making another gun for Golden Glider, Cold's sister. Iris also refuses Barry's advances because in this world, she claims that she never felt that way for him. Barry ends up fixing all of this and keeping the city from being crushed by the massive wave, but he regrets altering the timeline as now he can't get Iris like he was hoping for. And she begins to go through with Eddie's advances. Episode 17 is where we see Barry Allen face off against the Trickster, but the big reveal in this episode is that we learn more about Dr. Wells. Eobard Thawne came back in time to kill Barry as a child, but the Flash from the future came back to prevent it from happening. In the events that followed, Eobard Thawne killed Barry's mother. As the Reverse Flash tried to escape, he learned that he doesn't have his speed any longer, and he was informed by his computer that going back in time drained him of his powers. This version of Eobard Thawne then stalks a genius known as Dr. Wells, killing him and stealing his identity and face. The whole reason is so that he can build the particle accelerator, the experiment that will grant all of the metahumans their powers, 20 years earlier than it's supposed to be built. At this point, both Joe and Eddie, two police officers, both know about the Flash's powers, with Eddie helping out also. The Flash now has some friends in the Force. Episode 18, 19, to 20 are all about figuring out who Dr. Wells really is, and how they can get everyone on their side to fight against him, while Barry handles a metahuman who can control bees, and then one that can shapeshift into other people. By episode 20 though, Caitlin, Cisco, Joe, and Eddie are all preparing a trap to try and capture Dr. Wells. They manage to come up with a plan that works, but they discover that it wasn't actually Dr. Wells that they were trapping. It was in fact Hannibal Bates, the shapeshifter. The real Reverse Flash then kidnaps Eddie because he is in fact a distant relative of Eobard Thawne. For episode 21, we finally got the Gorilla Grodd appearance and fight. It was pretty epic, and it even involved the ending to General Eiling. It's a little side trip Barry has to take while looking for the Reverse Flash, and they try to figure out his plans. In episode 22, we find out that the Reverse Flash's plan is to turn the particle accelerator back on, the device that gave everyone their powers the first time then exploded. He's hoping to do this so that he can create a time bridge, allowing the Flash to go back in time and save his mother, but create the bridge that Reverse Flash needs to go home. Cisco and Caitlin learn that this will kill all of the metahuman prisoners that they've been illegally keeping in there as they defeated them. Barry Allen then teams up with Captain Cold to try and transport all of these prisoners to an abandoned Ferris airfield and get them out of there, only to have Captain Cold betray them because he's basically making the first version of the Rogues, a longtime villain group that fights against the Flash. The Flash then teams up with Firestorm and Arrow to face off against Dr. Wells outside of the airfield, where we get one heck of an epic fight ending with the Arrow disabling the Reverse Flash's speed with a special arrow so they officially capture Dr. Wells. In the final episode of the series, Dr. Wells explains that if Barry Allen goes back in time and saves his mother, he'll correct the timeline because they aren't on the right one right now and they haven't been. By going back in time, he'll also make the time bridge that will allow the Reverse Flash to go home, so he'll leave them all alone from this point forward. Barry debates for a good chunk of this episode what he should do, but in the end, he decides that he needs to go back into the past and save his mother. But once he goes back there, his future self tells him not to do it. So Barry finally gets to say goodbye to his mother, and then he goes back to his timeline to stop the Reverse Flash from leaving. He isn't fast enough and it looks like he's going to lose, but Eddie kills himself, ending the Thawne bloodline and phasing Reverse Flash out of existence. The Flash then tries to shut down the particle accelerator, but he can't, and a wormhole opens up over Central City. Our season ends with the Flash heroically running into the vortex to shut it down manually, and we're left on a cliffhanger. Now at this point, you might be wondering, why did the adult Flash tell the other Flash not to save his mother? And that's a question for another video that we're going to be covering here very soon. So don't worry, we will answer that. Other than that, I personally loved this season. I loved the Flash already, and this season just took everything that I love about the Flash and it put it on TV. I loved every episode and I thought the whole series is great. Now let me know in the comments down below what you thought about our quick rundown of the entire season. Do you want to see this for other shows like Arrow, Walking Dead, Doctor Who? Because we'll do it for all of them. We just need you to let us know what you want. I'm Benny for Comicstorian TV, and I'll see you guys next time right here.